Thank you so much for everybody joining us today. We're super excited about this webinar. We have some really special guests here for you today to join us on our webinar, Plan Ahead, Curriculum and Resources for Education and Training Pathways. My name is Dr. Lisa Rollins, and I am the National Director of Outreach and Partnerships here at PDK Educators Rising. I'm a former state director of Ed Rising, and I'm a former family consumer sciences teacher in child development and ed professions. And I love the education and training pathways. So I'm super excited to be here with you hosting this webinar with some amazing guests. We first want to dive into a little bit of the history of PDK and how we got to this point. We are long-standing in education, with being established in 1906. And then we took on Future Teachers of America in 1937, which turned into Future Educators of America, and then FEA in 2005. This year is going to be our 10-year anniversary of rebranding to Ed Rising. So we're super excited about that as well, and have been around for many years. And just a little bit about what we do here at Ed Rising is basically all of the things in education and training pathways are things that we support, right? So we're the CTSO. For those of you who don't know, CTSO is Career and Technical Student Organization, which is co-curricular by design. What we offer is what I like to refer to as the 5 C's. Helps me to remember, but chapters, curriculum, the competitions, going to the national, state, and local conferences, and then building that collaborative community. We're over 25,000 students right now, and we have over 1,400 chapters. Our national conference, anyone who hasn't been to a national conference, I highly recommend going and seeing it. You will leave awe-inspired. Over 3,300 students and 3,800 total participants, with breakout sessions and competitions, and the kids get to do some karaoke and lip sync battle, which is always the highlight of their night. So it's just a really great place that really leaves everybody inspired. And I always say bring a box of Kleenex, because those kids will definitely tug on your heartstrings as well. What we do at Ed Rising all day, every day, is focus on 2 major challenges. It's always about teachers and students, right? So we know that the major challenge for a lot of districts is teacher shortage, staff shortage. And we know this, 66% of schools reported lack of qualified candidates. And we'll hear how we prepare teachers, future teachers, a little bit more in the webinar. So that's challenge number 1 is shortages, and we aim to solve that every day. And the second challenge is that our teachers are not reflecting the populations in which they serve. So kids aren't seeing teachers that look like them. And so to address that challenge, we target underrepresented populations and ensure that there are less barriers to entering into the teaching profession. We know that 60% of teachers teach within 20 miles of where they went to school. So that's why Grow Your Own is so important. People want to stay in their communities and want to stay near their home bases. So it's important that we prepare them and have jobs for them when they're finished with their certification. With no further ado, I would love to introduce 2 of our panelists at this time and turn it over to them to do a brief introduction of themselves. I am so excited to be joined by Carla Smith from the Renton School District in Washington, and Amy Mitchell from Northeast DuBois High School in Indiana. So welcome to both of you. And Carla, I'll let you give yourself a little introduction, then we'll pivot over to Amy.
Thank you. Hi, I am in the part of Washington State outside of Seattle, near one of the very large Boeing plants. So if you've never been to Seattle or the Renton area, you can just sort of imagine where the big planes are built. I have been a teacher for over 35 years, which is a shocking number to me. And I have been an Educators Rising / Teacher Academy teacher since 2012. 2011 is when I found out that I would be taking over our Grow Your Own program. And then 2012 was when I started with my first cohort of high school students, juniors and seniors, in this class that in the Renton School District we call Teacher Academy. And I know in other school districts, it's also called Careers in Ed. So that's a little bit about me.
Thanks, Carla. Amy?
So I am Amy Mitchell. I am from Southern Indiana. Du Bois is my town. Northeast Du Bois is our high school. Very rural. Graduating class is about 54. But we have a education program. I have been teaching for over 23 years. And I have been part of an education program since I started teaching. Um, and we started Ed Rising in 2018 as a pilot school for the state of Indiana with Educators Rising and using the curriculum. So my first conference was in 2019 in Dallas, Texas. And like Lisa said, going to a national convention it's exciting. It was eye-opening. I took one student. She made it to nationals. Her and I went. Her mom is an educator. She went along with us. And she was just blown away as well at all the atmosphere and the neat sessions and things like that Educators Rising offered. And then she was just a junior, so then her senior year COVID hit, so we didn't get to go to nationals for that one. It was virtual. So but I'm very proud of the Educators Rising curriculum. I use that since I've got a hold of it, and I just love it. So we'll talk more about that.
Yeah, thanks for the intros, both of you. So we're just going to jump in. Both of you have alluded to the answer to this question a little bit already. But the first question I'd like to ask both of you is how did you get started with Ed Rising? Like, were you voluntold? Did you volunteer? It's a passionate program. So who tapped you and got you into this?
So I will start with that. I was at a conference and Educators Rising was there, and I was like, what is this? What is, what I kind of sought it out, and I'm so glad I did because they were like, do you want to be a pilot? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Because in my school corporation, we are very rural, so funding is not there for curriculum and for resources. So I was creating everything for the past, 15 years before I started with Educators Rising. And I knew it wasn't solid, but it was something because we were getting quality teachers, sending them to college, and they were coming back to us. So I just wanted more quality. So I was a pilot for the state of Indiana. So
Thanks, Carla.
So I'm an example of someone who says yes when I'm invited to do something, and then I get the details later. So, so when I was a new leader in this teacher academy at my high school, my university partner, which is what we have to do, so we have dual credit, was on the board for PDK. And he got one of my students excited about this thing called Future Educators of America and got her excited about preparing for 2 events. And of course, once she got excited, she needed to have a chaperone. And that was my first opportunity to know anything about Future Educators of America, which became Educators Rising. So Allie and I flew to Washington, D.C. So I was across the country. I'd never been to Washington, D.C. before. It probably felt a little weird to Allie that it was just her teacher. And we went and just decided we were going to have an open mind. We weren't going to worry about winning. We were just going to go learn everything we could and then come back to Renton and share our experience and then hopefully grow our Future Educators of America club. And it was at that conference they made this big announcement about the change in the name, the rebranding, the vision, the history. And it was very exciting. And so I thought, well, what a great time for us to be sitting in this enormous ballroom with all of the thousands of screaming kids and all the excitement around the Educators Rising changeover. And so the next year we started building our program, and now we're quite large. We can't take everybody that we want to with us across the country because it's very expensive. But to go from one student to 110 is pretty significant. And so I was a big part of the curriculum writing team in Washington. So we called it Recruiting Washington Teachers. I was a big contributor to that. But it was so hard to keep up because as soon as I would find the most relevant, most timely topics I could and create project-based learning experiences around those, as we all know, in a year, those are no longer timely. And so I love writing, I love creating, I love designing learning experiences, but I was constantly questioning my rigor and my relevance, and it was exhausting. And so when Educators Rising actually had a team of people doing that for me, they were the ones checking to be sure that the links were always working. They were the ones to be sure we were talking about timely, relevant, rigorous topics. It didn't take too much for me to persuade my CTE director to let me try it just 1 year at this special price. And then if it's not the right fit for us, then I promise we will back out. And what happened was Educators Rising curriculum just keeps getting better. I keep hoping it'll stop being so good, and it just keeps getting better. So I am a big fan, and that's from someone who did all of her own writing and creating and developing frameworks for about 8 years before Educators Rising came into our classrooms as curriculum. So if you have questions more about that, please let me know. But that's a snapshot of how I got into Educators Rising.
Awesome. And both of you, I want to point out, mentioned that you started with one student, bringing one student to conference. And I think that's just so powerful because I've been on plane rides to nationals where I have one teacher taking one student who's never been out of the city of Phoenix, let alone the state of Arizona, right? And it is an experience for the kids, it's an experience for the teacher. And so I urge you, even if it's one student, even if it's a teacher who just wants to go check it out, like Carla said, let's learn, let's use a year to learn. We invite you to our national conference just to learn and see what it's about. And there are competitions that are open to the public where you can walk in and see the kids actually competing. So don't let small numbers, like Carla said, you went from 1 to 110, I think you said, like, I mean, it grows and it will grow on its own. So I want to pivot a little bit because I know both of you have clinical experiences, internship components of your course that are very, very robust. So I want to turn and talk a little bit about what do the clinical experiences look like in your program in your state? Whoever wants to jump in.
You want to go again, Amy, since you led before? People might be tired of me already.
It's fine. So at Northeast Du Bois, we are very rural. So the clinical experiences that I have, my students go down to the elementary school and they are immersed into a classroom. I let the students pick what grade level or the teacher that they want to work with because, you know, it's their experience. And I want them to, you know, feel comfortable because they are high school students. And some of them are freshmen that are doing these experiences. So I want them to be comfortable and not be timid and shy and all that. So they go down and work for a semester in the classroom for a 45-minute period. And then, you know, journal and that kind of thing. And each year, we have a 4-year program. Each year it progresses, and their senior year, they're down there every single day, entire school year, for a block of time for about 90 minutes. And they're able to do lesson, like they create lesson plans, they teach a lesson or multiple lessons. We video them, and we use all that stuff for competitions. And one of my students today, he was just a junior last year, and he did one of the lesson planning at Rising oh my gosh, competitions. And when he was doing it and showed his video clips to the judges in the state of Indiana, he did not go to nationals, but he went to the state of Indiana. They were like, you won't be in a classroom very long. And I said, okay, why did she explain herself? And he goes, I looked at her weird and she had to back up. And she said, I think you'll be in administration really soon. Because he's a rock star. And he's just last year he was a rock star as a junior. Now he's a senior, and he teaches the class when he's down there. And he's actually in a 5th grade class this year. And the teacher just lets him teach. It's during her block of social studies, and he wants to be a high school social studies teacher. But I think his calling is really intermediate level with what he's doing. So it's neat. And our state, in our state standards, they embed at least 20 clinical hours for each of our courses. I don't know what other states do. So it's really nice that my kids get more than 20 hours because they go, 45 minutes a day. So
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amy. Appreciate it. Carla?
So we are not rural. We are very much in the city. And our elementary and middle schools and high schools are not necessarily very close together. So organizing transportation to go across the city sometimes dictates where we go and how long we can be there. So many of the things that Amy said are relatable for me as well. We're there for about 50-minute periods. Our high school's on a 70-minute period schedule. So I have to work very carefully to recruit in our elementary and middle schools. I always shoot to have it be about an 8-minute drive. So from the point that the bell rings and the school buses pull away and take them to their internship location, I map it out very carefully and try to have it under 10 minutes, counting stoplights. And then they get off the bus, and then they have approximately 50 minutes hands-on in classrooms. One of the things that we are doing here that's different than what I know a lot of schools in my state do, and that is we start as early as October. Many schools in my state will say that's too early. And I believe if we're really trying to grow our own, we need to get that hands-on exposure as soon as we can. I call it drinking the Kool-Aid. I need you to drink the Kool-Aid sooner, because if we wait till the end of the trimester or the semester, you may not have gotten excited enough about the way that you can change lives now. You don't need to wait to graduate from high school. You don't need to wait to graduate from college. You can start changing a kiddo's life today. So we're going to start that the first week of October. So September is intense, trying to get everybody recruited and ready and placed and semi-trained. But that's always the goal. And then it's a 1-year course. And so we aim to have no less than 60 hours of internship hands-on practicum time from October about the 10th through about May 10th. And so we are in classrooms for at least 60 hours. Part of that is also driven by, since we are doing college credits, there's an expectation from our college that we have a certain number of hours of hands-on. The transportation piece, I won't dwell on this because those of you who are in cities might find this helpful, but so you may not be aware that you have bus drivers that are hanging out waiting for their next bus run. If you have, a large enough district that buses are running several times a day, depending on elementary, middle, and high school schedules. And so once we realize we've got bus drivers and buses sitting in parking lots waiting to be utilized, we realized all of a sudden we could capitalize on that downtime. And my CTE director pays a certain dollar amount for them to help us transport our students across the city. So we have 2 buses and a van that carries 6 that at all 3 of my high schools, we deploy twice a day. And so we look like a fleet now. It's very exciting. We didn't used to be this big, remember, I mean, this has been a growing process, but I've kind of become a logistical director of sorts. And we are now able to serve far more classrooms, more mentor teachers, and more students because we've kind of figured out the transportation piece. That's for what I call our unpaid internships. If I can have just a couple more minutes, I'd like to talk about our paid internships, which are after school. So separate from the class, but I recruit from the Teacher Academy, we are doing something called Team Read. And I don't know if Team Read is a national organization. It's a nonprofit that works with schools who can identify 2nd and 3rd graders that are reading at least 1 grade level behind. And so it is the vision of Team Read for this to perhaps be a teen's first professional job. So we recruit from our Teacher Academy, and then I also hire other students. So I have 32 students that I just hired, and I have 16 in 2 different locations, and they show up at 3:15. So our high schools are over at 2:05. These kiddos that are hired go at 3:15 and they work until 4:30 for $20.29 an hour. And that's a twice a week program. And then I also have partnered with our computer science people and the robotics club. And we are now also doing, we call it study buddies. And we have high school students that are going in and helping after school programs with coding and robotics for like 1st and 2nd graders, and then 4th and 5th graders. So in Renton School District, if you want to ask questions about this, you can always email me. We have the unpaid traditional clinical experiences during the school day, and then we have paid internship experiences after school. I'll be quiet now. Thank you for your.
Oh, that's great information. And as we talk about what, an education and training pathway, all of the components that make it up, right? So the content, the resources, the clinical experience. Now I want to pivot just a little bit to industry credentials. So for those of you in the audience who are not familiar with industry credentials in CTE, there are states that have a list of approved industry credentials that align with the programs. Education and training. When I worked in Arizona, we had several that had credentials that were stackable, like CPR, AED, first aid, food handlers. Those were stackable credentials. But for an industry credential, in terms of CTE, an industry credential and in any CTE program prepares you to be college and or career ready, right? So we might have students who want to go directly into the field upon graduation. And we need them too, right? We have shortages in support services and parapros. And so we have an amazing partner joining us today from ETS to talk a little bit about the parapro certification, how that can amplify your students to be hireable immediately upon graduation, and what that will look like for your school. So welcome.
Thank you. My name is Vinay Ganti. I lead partnerships here at ETS, specifically for the Praxis family of tests, and it also includes Parapro. As Lisa mentioned, the Parapro exam is a widely utilized exam or assessment for a variety of uses, but one of the most common uses is in the actual sort of vetting of the basic proficiency or skills for future paraprofessionals. The exam tests 3 key areas of reading, writing, and math. Really sort of try to understand sort of if you have that basic sort of understanding of those 3 areas, so that way you can be an effective team member in the classroom. But what we're really excited about talking about today is how it can be utilized as sort of a culmination or endpoint for the CTE experience for your students. As Lisa mentioned, it could be a variety of things. It could be a distinguishing sort of point on that student's application or resume going into extension educator prep program or undergraduate program, or it could also be seen as a potential starting point for employability within a district. And as Lisa mentioned earlier in the presentation, we know that a significant number of teachers are from within 20 miles of that home district. What better way to sort of start to build that relationship and really sort of provide that clinical experience, actually paid clinical experience for these candidates post-graduation, and really unlock a whole new pathway for ongoing lifelong learning and upskilling for people who might be interested in getting into their educational careers sooner rather than later. So we're super excited by this opportunity to partner more deeply with EdRising. And as you can see here, there's some QR codes here specifically around some links for the technical requirements and also an application to become a testing center. One of the things that's exciting about our model is that, one, there's no cost to a district or a school to become a test center, to be able to administer the parapro exam on your own. And that we actually then provide sort of technical support there, as well as ongoing sort of support for you all. And once you become a test center, we actually provide basically like an honorarium on a per test taker basis for you all. So it actually can become a revenue driver for you as well. So could be super exciting, and also you could then leverage that test center beyond the CT curriculum for hiring needs and other things for your paraprofessional workforce. So
Thank you so much for sharing that. And if I can for just a second, I wanted to share with the audience my experience as an education and training teacher, giving the parapro to my students. As when I talked to, you can have it done right in your school, right? So, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed too easy as a teacher. I contacted my ATS rep. I said, hey, I have 20 students. I purchased 20 student vouchers, codes. I got a teacher to come into my classroom and proctor it while they all sat at computers. They put in their codes. I left the room. And then the results came, and I used it as a final exam grade. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it really was that easy coming from a teacher user standpoint to get my kids their para. So they all graduated with an industry credential on top of the CPR, the AED, the things I already did with them earlier in their 4-year program, but as that culminating activity. And then they can get hired directly back in while they're going to community college, while they're finishing their university, and or if that's what their career path is, they can be hired. So I highly suggest, if you don't have an industry credential, to reach out to see how you can get that, or even, as you mentioned, become a testing site and create revenue. We're always talking about fundraising ideas for education and training teachers, right? Like, why not have a testing center at your site and get some of that to go to your program? So thank you so much for joining us. I know you might have another meeting right at this time, but if you want to stay, you can. If not, feel free. But thank you. And please, anyone in the audience, reach out if you're interested in getting in the parapro for your education and training program. And again, if you have any questions, you could throw those in the Q&A. Vinny just put his contact information in there as well. And we'll also have another QR code at the end on the last slide that you can reach out for more information. So thank you so much for sharing that information. It's very powerful to help our kids secure employment, add that to their resumes. So thank you. And now I want to turn it over to Amy and Carla to talk about any industry credentials that you do with your students or you're looking into, or how do you navigate that?
So in the state of Indiana, the only industry credentialing, I actually just looked it up to see if they changed anything recently. All they do is the CDA, which is early child, development, and nothing for the education for elementary students which are my students, elementary and middle school and high school, is what my students usually want. None of them really want the early childhood, which is the CDA. So this is interesting to me. I actually told Lisa earlier, I was at a professional development last week, Friday, and they had a session for our paraprofessionals, and it said parapro, which was just what was talked about. So I was like intrigued. So I'm actually sending an email to my CTE director and saying, who do I contact at the state? Because we don't have credentialing at the state level within the education pathway. It's only in the early childhood education. So
Thank you for sharing that, Amy. And for those of you in the audience, CDA is a Child Development Associates. It's we're geared towards your ECE programs. Again, it can be great. They do a portfolio, they get scored, but the Parapro will be the industry credential that will get you immediately hired into some of those other ones. Carla, did you have anything on industry credentials for us?
Sure. So I would recommend whatever your school district does when they want to hire from the outside for educator positions in your district. If you're not doing this yet as a teacher academy, I would say that's probably a great step one. Make an appointment to meet with whoever it is in your district office that is a part of onboarding a position for people that don't already work or go to school in the school district, and find out what is that process. Chances are good it is some form of the para pro exam, whether it's ETS, master teacher, or a different company, because your entry point to me is a lot easier if you will adopt the same testing procedures that your HR is already using.
Yeah.
So what we do is similar to what Lisa already described. We have our HR team come in before we give the test, and we talk about how much we want our students to come back and work for us, either as paraeducators while they're going to college, or maybe during their gap year. We want them to come back and work in our schools, whether it's in a traditional teaching role or something else. So they come through and they talk about how much we're wanted, and please go in there and take that test seriously. And so they kind of, prime the pump a little bit. And then we offer the exam across our 3 schools. And so far since 2018, I've had 140 students pass it. So we have 140 students. Now, we don't have 140 students that work for us right now, clearly, but 140 students that have taken it and passed it. And then HR comes back. We do a big congratulations thing. Certificates are passed out, and our HR gives students a letter of intent to hire and says something like, we already have positions open for the fall. We would love it if you would consider working for us while you go to college or while you figure out your next steps. We would like to hire you immediately. If you're interested, you need this letter to upload as a part of your file and your application. And then they get interviewed in the summer, get hired in August, are onboarded during new hire orientation, and then hopefully we can hang on to them all the way through student teaching, and then maybe coming back and teaching for us. So that is something that we like to partner with our HR. So it's not just the teacher academy teacher leaders say, this is important. It's the HR saying, we need you, and we want you to come back. So it has been a journey, trying to, first of all, get on the radar of HR. And now we very much are on the radar. We are also the go-to for the principals. When they know they have positions, they tend to call me first and say, we have some applicants, but they're unknowns. Who have you got from the teacher academy? We'd like to call them first. So, and then more recently, HR even gave our teacher academy students their own application button. So when you go online, it says teacher academy graduate positions, and you can click on that. And if you came through the teacher academy, it makes it very easy for the new graduates to know where to go find the positions that we've been talking to them about for 2 years. And it also helps the principals know, go there first and then call Carla. So that's how we do it.
I love it. So, to the audience, get your HR involved from the beginning, make sure you know what it takes to get hired. and get it going. And again, I love the, setting your students apart from every other applicant. I presented in Connecticut, and a district there said they also have a checkbox on their application. Were you part of Ed Rising program? Because they know our students are so much more well prepared and ahead. I was just on a call a couple of days ago where they said the college kids are like in classes and they're like, we can teach these, we know this already. Like they feel so much more well prepared. So it's wonderful to hear. And I know you both touched on this in your intro. We're going to pivot just a little bit back more to the curriculum. And, our curriculum is aligned to national boards, teaching standards, and test standards. We know that, like Amy said, web-based, so we can fix the link. We can, those things that take time as teachers. And looking back at my own teaching, the amount of time I took in creating lesson plans and finding the resources and the links and creating the student guided notes. So all of that being said, I know both of you are curriculum users, and Carla said some really cool things about the training when we last presented together too. So I'm going to turn it over to both of them to just dive in a little bit about how our curriculum is laid out, right? You can use it as prescribed. You can use Unit 5 before 1, right? The flexibility is up to the teacher. And I love that because, every teacher has their own delivery and things that make sense to them, and they want to put their own spin on it, which I love about this curriculum. So I'm going to turn it over and open the floor up to both of you to talk a little bit about how you use the curriculum, what your experience is like. Do you use it as prescribed? Do you, make it flexible? And then if you dove into our student interactive guidebook yet, that I'm super excited about. So share with us how you use the curriculum, the assessments, the student interactive notebook, and all just to support the goals that you have for all of your students in your program.
All right. So in the state of Indiana, I'm able to teach my courses dual credit. So I have to work with Ivy Tech. That is my dual credit campus that I work with at our school. So I pick and choose. I kind of move around, but I still use Educators Rising. So within the 4 different courses that I teach, I use pieces of that. So in the principles, we do the understanding our school, we do the careers piece. I think there's 6 different units that I do in my first. In the child and adolescent development, there's only like 2, which is my second year. 2 pieces of the curriculum that I use. The third class, teaching and learning, I use 8 of the units. Unfortunately, the interactive guidebook came out after I was starting. So this semester and with my principal's class, and I was kind of bummed because I was like, all right, we've already covered some of this stuff, and I've already made all my packets for my kids. So I love the look of it, and I'm like wishing I would have held off, but my school year starts beginning the end of July. So it kind of, hinders that because this did not come out. And Lisa, you can tell me, but I didn't notice it until September. Did it come out
Unit 1 came out in September. Unit 3 is coming out pretty quickly next week, I believe. So yeah, it was right at the September. So it missed the July start dates for schools. Yeah.
Yeah. But the curriculum I really like. There's lots of pieces embedded. There's articles that the kids can read. And the guided notes, I really like that, but I think I'm going to love the interactive a little bit better than that. So I'm kind of working through getting rid of what I've already printed, and then we'll probably, if it falls the way I have my units pieced together, we'll use that interactive guidebook. But I know it definitely will work next year whenever I use the curriculum next year, because I have it for 2 more years after this, because did a 3-year purchase. So I don't know if I'm missing anything.
Oh, that was good. Thank you. I appreciate it. Carla?
All right.
So similar to what Amy described, I shared earlier that I was involved in curriculum writing for our State of Washington Recruiting Washington Teachers Hub for careers in ed. And so I have some themes that are very near and dear to my heart. And so I loved when I opened up the curriculum site that I could see my themes throughout the curriculum. I didn't have to worry about necessarily, I'm not a linear teacher. I'm in the moment. I plan ahead, but what's relevant right now? Who are my students and what do they need? Who are the children that they're interacting with in schools, and what do they need? And how can I best prepare my big kids to go in and serve little kids? And so my team plans the whole year by theme and topic. And then we have so much fun digging into the curriculum and following the links and finding things that are new and exciting, and we don't need to create them, and it's fresh. And so very similar to what Amy said about that with what we use. Also, I think for those of you who kind of get sucked into the vortex of wonderful chasing down resources, for a long time, I was a subscriber to Teach Channel. That was before Ed Rising curriculum came out, but I found a lot of inspiration and beautiful samples in Teach Channel, and I had to pay for a subscription for that. And then it got to the point that was a little bit too expensive, and so I let go of my Teach Channel subscription. And in the Educators Rising portal, there's a whole link that takes me into Teach Channel, and I can research and search, and there's 45-second clips, there's 1-minute clips, there's 3-minute clips that describe exactly what I'm wanting to convey to my students about any given topic. So that's like the thing I'm super excited about right now, because I did not realize when I saw the link for Teach Channel in the curriculum that I was going to get it. I thought it was going to take me there, and they were going to ask me for my credit card number and all of the things to have access. And so I'm like a little kid in a candy store this week, because all those videos that I love so much came with my curriculum. And I'm embarrassed to admit I didn't know it until this week. But now, for those of you listening, just know it's really good. You don't have to pay for that part.
Yeah, and the teaching channel videos are just amazing. And we put the link in the chat for anybody who wants to, but if you get the curriculum, yes, they're in there. We also have national board certified videos in there. So that, I mean, and I think too, Carla, you talk about, I don't have to search for them, right? And I don't have to make sure they're school appropriate. Like, I know they've been vetted. I know that I can show this. Even if I don't watch the whole, 10-minute video, I want to show part of it, I still know it's going to be appropriate for my kids. So I do really love that about that too. And then, Carla, I wanted to talk a little bit about the training. You made a statement the last time we were in person together, as I was telling, we don't just hand a curriculum to you and say, figure it out. We have a 6-hour in-depth training. We have an orientation. We have somebody to walk you through. And you made a comment in that training that moved me because you'd been using the curriculum a couple of years. And I just wanted you to share that with our audience.
So I had been using the curriculum for a couple of years. And so I was, to be honest, really dreading sitting through a 6-hour training, because I thought I probably could lead the training. But okay, I'll do it, because I'm trying to role model good leadership in my team. And what I'd really like to do is, be out there with my students, watching them compete. But all right, I'll play along and I'll be a good sport. And I so embarrassed to admit that it was the best training I've ever been to, ever, hands down. And Debbie was amazing. I just wanted to be her best friend, like, after that experience. And I loved it. And I would sit through the 6 hours again, because she kept saying, remember, go to the treasure box. Remember these little tiny links. There's your treasure box. And my team and I just found so much encouragement. And it never felt like a sales pitch, everybody, just so you know. You know what I'm talking about. It did not ever feel like a sales pitch. It was more like, this is great stuff and we're excited about it, and we're here for you to help you use it in a way that works best for you and your students and the future of our profession. And I just felt surrounded by like-minded people, and I would sit through the whole 6 hours again, and I wouldn't complain even one time. So,
I just love that example so much. And because you were talking about like, did you click here? Did you click here? And Carla had said, I've been using this curriculum and didn't even know some of the features. Like I didn't know until I went to the training. So, I just encourage anybody to, even if we're seasoned teachers, even if we've been doing it, there's always something new to learn. And I think Carla is a great example of, role modeling that leader, even though we didn't want to go. I was like, but look how, what great things came out of it. And Debbie's amazing. Everybody wants to be Debbie's best friend and hang out with Debbie. So she's great. We're gonna have one last question, but we're gonna then flip to Q&A. So anybody out in the audience that has a question, if you could throw that in there, anything that you want answered live for either Carla and or Amy. And there are people asking for your email addresses. So this PowerPoint or this webinar will be recorded and their emails are on the slide of their intro slide, but we can also throw their emails right in the chat for everybody who wants to reach out directly to Carla and Amy. Be prepared to get some emails because there's going to be folks that have way more specific questions for you as well. So that's very exciting. And we'll flip to our last question. Because not every state has official CTSO status, I just wanted to walk our audience through how does it look in your state with Indiana having CTSO status, Washington does not, but they still run the program. Talk about your own states and how that looks different so our audience can align with one or the other.
The state of Indiana, we do have a state Educators Rising program. It's very small. I don't know. We fit into our Indiana State Teachers Association conference room for our last year's for our state conference. I didn't actually reach out to Angela Miller, who is our state coordinator. She's just not the coordinator for there. She's also for the Indiana State Teachers Association, the student collegiate level like advisor too. So she doesn't just do one, she does both. So sometimes there's like disconnect because she's focused on that and not with the high school students, but it works for now until we grow. But the state recognizes us. They don't really fund us. So the Indiana State Teachers Association is funding us at this time. And they actually are paying for our student memberships at the state level. And they also are providing like scholarships for nationals. And they're also since 2018, they have been offering scholarships to our students that advance to nationals, and they pay full ride for our students to go to nationals, which is really awesome. Wow. That my dues that I pay to our state association are going back to our students that are going to be future teachers. So that's really cool in my eyes. Maybe other people it's not, but I think it's cool. That I'm supporting that program and helping grow that, not just being their teacher, but also growing for other students. Cause I haven't went to nationals the past 2 years. So it's been a little bit, but, so yeah, that's how we do that. I do things at my school and then like district, we have 4 school corporations in my county and we kind of do little things with each other and with our students to get them to connect. We're trying to do regional. Indiana is a long state, and it's 6 hours to the top. So we do try to do like regional things in Southern Indiana. It's really hard because being rural, my kids are involved in sports and things. So, but other schools are able to connect for the most part and do little get-togethers, crafts, look at some of the state competitions and national competitions. So
awesome. I love it. Carla?
So we are what's called CTSO equivalent in Washington State. So I'm in a huge FCCLA state. And so I fill out the equivalency documentation to show that I do all of the same requirements that all CTSOs are required to do. It's just that I do them through Educators Rising. We are not funded at all by the state. I just have a very supportive CTE director, and he believes in what Educators Rising is doing, and it's the right fit for my students. So because of that, we've been doing Educators Rising and doing the equivalency documents. More recently, we're getting some traction in Washington where they still are saying, well, we're not going to fund it. But we will see this as a legitimate CTSO. And so now some schools and I are beginning to talk about what would it look like if we just decided to put together our own little regional event, maybe had a fun keynote speaker, and let the students maybe practice their events in front of their competition pieces in front of one another. So we're beginning to kick that around. But meanwhile, so I love it when like our worlds all collide, right? So I was having that conversation over here, and then over here with these other people who don't know these people over here. I got a phone call from our university partner, and the last 2 years, our university partner went with us to Educators Rising, and they really want to be a part of helping our students get ready for national competitions. And so I got the phone call 3 hours after I got the conversation going over here with teachers, like what would it look like to do our own little regional thing. And so Central Washington University and I were on the phone together. We're going to plan an event at the college. They will host us. They will have some college students that kind of run it, which is very exciting because some of those students are my graduates. Now they're in college, so they're going to help run the program. And I think those are the same students that got Central Washington University excited about it because they had competed, loved their experience, went off to college, got a club going there. And so now full circle, some of my students that are now in their junior and senior years of college will be organizing, hosting kind of our own regional on the DL Educators Rising event. So more on that in a year. I'll tell you how that goes. But I believe we're going to do it on February 28th. So if anybody wants to fly to Seattle, Washington, you can see history like for first time.
Thank you both for sharing. And I love how your states are different, your populations are different, your approaches are different, starting small and then growing big and picking up that momentum. So thank you both for sharing those. And now we're going to turn it over to some questions that have been asked in the Q&A and the chat. We really want to get to those. There's some California questions here. California is very similar to Washington and what Carla just described. They fill out an equivalency form and use us as their CTSO. We do not have official CTSO status in California yet, but we are working on it. We're Washington and California, same exact thing in terms of this program, getting that equivalency form going. That was one question that I can just answer off of the top. Let's see, open question. Carla, can you explain a little bit more about the equivalency document? Oh, you're muted.
What
Sorry.
state is that question from?
It's,
You know?
Can you explain more about the equivalency documents? Is that a thing in Pennsylvania? So I'm assuming this person is from Pennsylvania.
Okay, so in Washington, we have this thing called frameworks with OSPI, which is our state agency. And so frameworks are the way that our courses all get approved. And then within the frameworks is the embedded CTSO standards for our state. And then from that same agency, OSPI in Washington, is where we, I think, it is downloaded from our state agency. And so, if the person who asked the question, I'm assuming you would do state frameworks for your class. I'm wondering if you were to go into your state agency and put in the word CTSO equivalency and see, it's literally in Washington, it's literally a template.
Yeah, it is in
And if you want to
California
email
too.
me, I can send you a sample of mine. And you can see if you could create something similar to that in your state.
And Pennsylvania, Carrie, who wrote that, we have partnership with Pennsylvania and curriculum sites in Pennsylvania. So that may be a miscommunication or something that we can work out with you. Your outreach coordinator is Martha, and you can connect with her. She'll put her email into the chat as well. Because Pennsylvania, we do have a lot of Pennsylvania chapters, a lot. So maybe that was just a miscommunication there. Let's see, other questions. I see one that just says Educator Rising, so that is not, another California, those were answered. Okay, any other questions for our panelists? Anything in the chat that I am missing? Speak now or forever hold your peace.
If any of you ever want to come to Seattle, just email me and I'll pick you up from the airport.
Ah, what a blessing. I'm gonna try to make it there for sure in February. That'll be a great one. All right, so we will wrap up. Again, here's the ETS QR code if you're interested in getting the Parapros and Industry Cert for your students, your program. Please feel free to reach out. Please also never hesitate to reach out to us here at Ed Rising. You can always reach out to any of us at community@educatorsrising.org. Martha and Molly are also in the chat answering questions and leaving their email addresses for you to reach out specifically to them. The California questions, you can email me directly. I work closest with California, so you can email me those questions. And again, I just wanted to sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, thank Amy and Carla. They are two of the most influential teacher leaders I've come across in my work. Inspiring. And Amy's statistic, I have to tell everybody this, I end a lot of our webinars with this statistic. But two school years ago, Amy says she worked in, works in a small rural district, and they had 5 new hires. All 5 of her new hires in her corporation came from her Ed Rising class. So she's batting 100% on new hires over there, and it's so influential and it's so powerful. And 100% is 100%. Like, that is insane statistics. And that is just proof that grow your own works. When students are invested in by teachers like Amy and Carla, when they're given the resources like the Ed Rising curriculum, the guidebook, the assessments, they are more prepared. And when we work with our HRs to get them hired back in, they are hired in. We see that in the statistics here and the number of students that have been hired by both Renton and in Amy's district corporation as well. So I just want to say thank you, because the teachers are often the thing that gets it started, right? Somebody chose you to be that inspiring teacher, and now others want to be like you. So thank you again from the bottom of my heart, from all of us here at Educators Rising and PDK. Thank you for joining this webinar today. Again, reach out should you ever need anything, and have a great night.